Thank you so much, Michael. That was fabulous. I think you have some of your own quotes in there that that hopefully in a year's time someone else might use in their presentation. Yeah, some really inspiring words. I love
Thank
that
you.
drawing and the dream to a dreaming. Yeah, I think that summed it up really well. Okay, so we're going to move to our next presenter now. So I'd like to invite Geoff Davies, and Geoff's presentation is Beyond MMT, Fixing the Rest of the Economy. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you, Megan. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Great.
Good. And thank you, Michael. I'll carry that vision of running out of inches probably for the rest of my talk and life. And the same confusion between symbols and reality probably runs through everything I want to say now. First, I'll acknowledge being on the land of the Durga-speaking people of the Yuin Nation, which occupies the southeast coast of New South Wales and runs inland to where I live, and honour their elders past and present. Now, George Lakoff said, "Don't think of an elephant." So I'm sure none of you is thinking of an elephant now. Likewise, don't think of MMT. So Lakoff was talking about how we package our messages, and my mistake, if it is that, was to say beyond MMT, so everybody thinks about MMT. I'll say a little about it, but I want to talk about other major aspects of the economy. And first, just general remarks about economies. There are many ways markets can operate within societies. It's not just about capitalism versus socialism. That's a false dichotomy. There's a whole spectrum. Markets might even be subordinate to society and guided by society. So I'll talk about aspects. I'll talk about banks, and that includes MMT, about markets in general, financial markets, GDP and growth, collective ownership, and balancing cooperation with competition. So MMT, it can help us to get through recessions because government can create whatever money is required to keep things ticking along, however reluctantly they might do it. But wouldn't it be better to avoid recessions? MMT is about the functioning of a central bank. But the commercial banks create far more money than central banks. They profit from debt. That means they push debt onto society. They want us all to have big loans. They create debt-fed booms. And unfortunately, excessive debt causes financial crashes because it gets to the stage where people can't pay off their debts. Excuse me. For example, property bubbles inflate the price of land because banks keep issuing bigger and bigger mortgage loans. There are proposed structural reforms which never get discussed in, for example, royal commissions about banks because they don't talk about the underlying structural flaws. One proposed remedy is to scale loans to the cost of the construction of the house that sits on land. It's not the house, the price of the house that's increasing, It's the price of the land under it because of speculation. One way to short circuit that would be to vest ownership in the community, so that a community owns the land that it lives on and rents it at prescribed prices. And that would cut out the role of speculators. In fact, that was the early intention of the Australian Capital Territory, but it was soon subverted. So that's commercial banks. They create booms and busts. Markets, I want to talk about markets in general. And here's the dirty big secret of our society. Markets do not automatically yield optimal results. The theory that says that is wildly unrealistic. And we can see it in practice. There are dysfunctional markets all around us if we learn to look. For example, aged care homes. They don't maximise care, they maximise profit. And we've heard of some atrocities of the neglect of people in these places, because corporations are required to profit ahead of the care of the residents. The natural gas market, we pay more for natural gas in Eastern Australia than the Japanese pay for gas that comes from Australia. What kind of optimal market is that? It's not. And I've mentioned residential property, which has been in a wildly inflationary spiral for decades now. So markets left untended don't work. What we need to do is look at the incentives under which they operate. And then we can use taxes, subsidies, and regulation to adjust those incentives and try to align their incentives to what we want as a society. We could, it's just getting rid of a lot of perverse incentives that currently operate would make a huge difference, but we can do better than that. What if we made it profitable to support people and nurture the environment? The difference could be dramatic. We might be surprised how quickly life improved. So that's markets in general. Financial markets, I want to say a bit about. They are parasitic, destabilizing, and destructive. They trade about 50 times faster than the productive economy really needs for the optimal allocation of investments. And I've done that estimate in 2 or 3 different ways, and you get the same answer. There is far more money trading than the world needs. The financial sector is far bigger than we need, and it dominates us. One way to deal with that would be to impose a transaction tax so that every financial transaction pays a small tax. The point of that is not to raise revenue, it's to take the profit out of the speculation and the arbitrage so that we can harness finance to the needs of society. Another aspect of the economy, gross domestic product. It's been mentioned today. It is not accounting. It is a crude tally of anything we spend money on, whether those things are good, useless, or bad, and many of them are bad, like clear felling rainforest. We need, if it's to be accounting and we need proper accounting, then there would be a proper balance sheet, and such things have been proposed, they're developed, they could be adopted. And in that way, you can say, well, here are the good things and here are the bad things, and what's the net benefit? You can have what's called triple bottom line accounting, for example, in which you look at the balance sheets of the economy, of society, and of the environment. It might be difficult to make those estimates, some of them, but at least trying would shunt us roughly in the right direction instead of stupidly in the wrong direction towards the cliff. So a corollary or an accompaniment to GDP is eternal growth. The GDP has to increase by a certain amount every year. Eternal growth is wrecking the planet. It's possible to escape the dichotomy, the false dichotomy of growth and no growth, by separating, by separating quality and quantity. We can govern to improve quality of life, and we have the means at the same time for reducing the quantity of resources we use and of waste, pollution that we dump on the planet. Many people in NENA are trying to do these things. What we need to do is attend to the larger structures in the economy and our society that are always subverting the many good efforts. Another aspect of our economy is we can use collective ownership. If we use good forms of collective ownership, they can ensure a fairer flow of wealth. Corporations are one form, but they're set up to siphon wealth from everybody to the already wealthy. To be a good collective ownership, it needs to be engaged. It can involve local ownership, employee ownership, customer ownership, producer ownership, any combination of those, in place of the irresponsible absentee ownership that dominates at present. If we did that, the centuries-long conflict between bosses and workers would be solved at a stroke. Now, a general underlying feature, the premise on which our current selfish competitive economic system is based, is the claim that people are innately selfish. Well, we're not. People are highly social and cooperative. We do compete, but competition and cooperation coexist. Now, that is not a common, that sounds like a paradox in our Western culture, but the Taoists of the East figured this out a long time ago. A rich life follows from balancing, learning how to balance cooperation with competition, balance my selfish interest with the interest of my group, my community, my society. So it's the highly unbalanced state that we're in that is being so destructive, not only of the planet, but of our society, which is being torn apart by far too much selfishness. I've written a number of books. I've put my website address in the chat at the beginning. You can find it there. I'll mention 2 books, and I'm not using high tech. I'm just going to wave it here. It looks backwards in my image. It's called The Little Green Economics Book, or its full title is The Little Green I'm Afraid of Economics, but I Want to Save the World book. And it summarizes these points and others and gives sources. so you can pursue it if you're interested. Here's a more systematic presentation. It's called Economy, Society, Nature. I wrote that at a level suitable for students or anybody really. It's not highly technical. It goes through the ideas systematically. So, as I said at the beginning, what if we had an economy that supports people and nurtures the living world? Wouldn't that be a good thing? Wouldn't it be good if it supported all the good things that NENA people work on? Thank you.